It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
We got beat by a really good UConn team. Obviously, we didn't have enough to compete in the way that we would have liked to. But now all is well in women's basketball.
It all starts up front, whether it's on offensive line or defensive line. And I think we've continued to improve our line of scrimmage here. I've only been here 1 year, but I've seen significant improvement. That's a compliment to Coach Muschamp, Coach Thompson, Coach Mike Peterson, Dillman, strength coaches. So it's a work in progress.
If I'm charting it, I mean, it's pretty even across the board. All those guys are having their moments, and then they also have some moments where making some poor decisions or the defense kind of caught them off guard a little bit. But I'm optimistic with where we are right now at quarterback.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, the Professor Tom Hayes from Columbia here on a lovely Tuesday afternoon. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com, on Twitter @SportsTalkSC. Be sure to, if you need to, check out our live Periscope via Twitter. You can watch us. You can listen to us that way wherever you go, should you lose us over the airways from one of our outstanding affiliates here in the state. So, yeah, it was an ugly, ugly night for the South Carolina women up in Albany, New York. They returned to Columbia about 3 this morning. And, it was another really good season at 29-7. They defended their championship well. They won another SEC championship, and the goal was to get back to the Final Four. And I'm sure when you're a program at the level of the USC women, when you fall short of that, it's a disappointing season. Yet they just ran into a team that they cannot beat. And as long as Gino is there and pulling in the absolute best players in the country every year, I don't know. It's just going to take one of those accidental nights like Mississippi State had last March or early April to beat them.
Yeah, people are trying to turn this into an indictment of Dawn Staley or the South Carolina program, at least people who I've seen in the comments on our website at sportstalksc.com and also on Twitter, like we saw last night as well. This is not an indictment of the South Carolina program. This is, if anything, a coronation of the Connecticut women's basketball program. And I know that this is probably a very overplayed thing that people like to say, and people kind of get angry when this is brought up, but I don't think it's good for the sport. I really don't. I think that it really takes a lot of the drama out of the sport. I think that it is probably the biggest problem with women's athletics, and the fact that the competition is so slated toward one team. It'd be one thing if UConn had an equivalent or had an equal or had somebody that they could bring in that would be a good protagonist is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Like would you have
foil.
Yeah, somebody on the level like we had in the NBA with Golden State and Cleveland Cavaliers. You don't have that. You have Connecticut, and then you have everybody else. And I just don't think that that's a good thing.
I think the one thing is that you celebrate what you have. I never saw North Carolina fans through the Wooden era downplay their team because they never could beat UCLA. UCLA won 10 championships in 12 years. I mean, it dominated. I knew it was a different era, but they just, between Walton and Kareem, Lou Alcindor then, and they filled in with Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe, and they just mauled people when they got in the NCAAs. Of course, it was shorter then. You only had about 24 teams going, but still, the way they were shooting last night, nobody's going out 30 feet guarding anybody. It's almost like if South Carolina had any chance of winning that game, and they shot over 50% in that ball game, is that what the court is 94 feet, you almost had to play 64 feet. Look, that extra 30 feet where you can lay it in, go ahead and have that, but you're not throwing those haymakers from 30 feet on us tonight.
The offensive game that South Carolina played last night would have beaten the majority of teams in the country, and almost, I would say, every team except for maybe 4 or 5, and especially the way that UConn played last night. Do you think it's bad for the sport? I think it's bad for the sport.
Well, not necessarily. I think, being a Packers fan, being a Yankees fan, being a Celtics fan.
And Microsoft fan.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali and Secretariat. Montreal Canadiens and the Americans in every war. I kind of like winners. And you know what? I've got no problem with dynasties. I think dynasties are great. And to see others trying to knock you off, like the UCLA dynasty of all those years, like the Celtics in their long run, I mean, it's kind of neat. I know it's frustrating to the other fans who suffer the consequences of falling short year after year. But the separation, let's see what happens in the Final Four, all right? But the separation appears to be so great between Connecticut and everybody else. Let's see if Notre Dame gives them a battle, or Mississippi State or Louisville can knock them off. I certainly, obviously the odds makers and everybody else think that will not happen.
And the other thing, too, is it's not just a UConn thing, but you have 4 number 1 seeds who are representing all 4 regions in the women's basketball tournament. It's not necessarily something that always happens, but again, I think it's a further indication of where the power is shifted in the women's game. It's only with a select few.
How many teams we have? 4 teams, and I think among them 6 losses the entire year.
Well, the USC women, just to put it to bed, had another great year. The question now becomes for South Carolina women under Dawn Staley, number one, just making sure that she stays put and is not tempted to go back to her alma mater, which she said she wasn't interested.
I don't think that you want that job.
And I believe that she will stay put. I would see no reason not to think so. But now you have to look at this. The big 3 for South Carolina, they have passed. You go back to Tiffany Mitchell, Elena Coates, and now Asia Wilson. Those were 3 great players, and they, with some help, they pushed the program to the top. Now they're gone, and it will be a rebuilding job for Dawn Staley and a test of her recruiting and her staff's recruiting over the last couple of years. Have they brought in the kind of talent to be able to continue the success that they have had over the last 4 or 5 years?
She did not seem, I forget which press conference this was, she didn't seem very optimistic about exactly what they're bringing in this year, what they can bring in for next year as far as the recruiting trails go, because of the fact that where it sits right now, you can't replace Asia Wilson and her scoring output with one player. It has to kind of come from within. You're going to have to see players like Kiki Herbert-Harrigan step up. If Alexis Jennings comes back, you have to see her step up. You have to make sure that a lot of these other players on the periphery who maybe didn't get the kind of minutes that they did this year are going to get valuable minutes. And, I mean, maybe you go and you get the transfer market. Maybe you go overseas and get somebody. I mean, it's going to take some sort of transcendent, I hate to use that word again, I used it last night, some sort of transcendent player or change on the roster in order to at least replace that output.
You have to go with what you have. And the key point is this: they will go from an inside-oriented team, their best players, Cooper gets in next year, Harris will be a junior, their best players are going to be their guards. So they have to go guard-oriented. We've seen it before. Hate to bring back Wooden again. Wooden won his first championship with 5 guys that was 6'5" or shorter. Then he went to Walton and Kareem. So he coached both ways. He could coach small and he could coach big. So next year she'll have to coach really a swarming defense and that's her bread and butter anyway. Is her swarming defense.
Get shooters too. They'll need shooters.
Well, they've got 2 commitments: Destiny Henderson, one of the top-rated point guards in the country out of Florida, and a center, Victoria Saxton from Rome, Georgia. She's 6'1", and she too was highly recruited. But they have missed, for a power program like USC. Of course, they're recruiting with the very best teams in the country. I mean, when they go after a player now, it's the other teams are Baylor, Connecticut, Notre Dame, very top women's teams
got
in the
3
country.
I think 2 or 3 of the players they were after.
And one of them was dunking last night. Did you see her?
Yeah.
In the dunk contest?
Yes.
By the way, Zion Williamson won the dunk contest for the guys, but at Connecticut, and South Carolina recruited that girl too.
Yes.
They were in the final few for her, but she went to Connecticut, and she was not only dunking it, but she was dunking it with authority. This wasn't just, getting it barely over the rim and down. This was throwing it down with a forearm.
I don't know how you fix it, but you have to get some of these players to go away from UConn and think that they can maybe go up and get the giant killer there.
Be right back. it was over. Switched over to Showtime. I was watching the movie Twister. Remember that movie?
Yes.
The tornado movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always a very emotional movie.
I wouldn't go there. But
very touching. Helen Hunt. I mean, anything with Helen Hunt in it. Come on.
Is it?
So anyway,
Is it?
then I went over to Twitter moments after the USC game was over. And I mean,
this is you. This is you right
well,
now.
I mean, you got a Columbia television station basically just, drooling all over Asia Wilson. I hope she took a shower after she read that Twitter post. And I'm like, I'd had enough. I had enough. That was enough to get what I like to call the corn scorn. And
scorn, really?
The corn scorn is something you do not want to receive.
That's where we're at now.
On Twitter and on the air. And it's like, come on. You are a major television station in the capital city.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to emotionally come apart over the fact that Asia Wilson had played her last game at South Carolina.
I think it's one thing to say what a great career she's had. Congratulations on the success. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's another thing to be like, we'll miss you, Asia.
Well, I mean,
we'll miss you so much.
Let's don't misconstrue this. This is not about Asia. I know we've had a lot of conversation about things related to her because of what people are tweeting about her. And she is a great basketball player. She's been a great women's basketball player at South Carolina. You can debate it till the cows come home, and she's the greatest basketball player ever at South Carolina, the greatest athlete ever at South Carolina. You can debate that all you want. But from a media standpoint, there is a line that you just don't cross as an independent journalistic operation. And by putting out a tweet, as Channel 10 did in Columbia, I don't know who did it over there, but somebody did. Thank you, Asia. 4 great seasons doesn't seem like enough. Thanks for everything. Picture of Asia. Like, Asia, you have made our day. You are just and, it's one thing to be a fan on your own time and to tweet things of that nature, but to take your media company and put its masthead up there and put your entire news operation, sports operation out like that on Twitter. I mean, if I were the head honcho over there, somebody's head would be on a platter.
It's okay. I mean, that's what, how much orange do we see in the Death Valley press box?
I know there's fanboys up there and there's fanboys in the media in South Carolina. There's fanboys in every press box now. We have been invaded. The journalists have been invaded by team fan sites that SIDs are forced to allow to get seats in the press box. Now, I'm not saying all those people from those websites act like fanboys. There's some good reporters who do their job the right way. They just happen to be covering one team and one team only. And that's all they care about. And they don't associate themselves with anything else. This is an independent news operation that it is not part of the Gamecock fan nation, supposedly, and should be covering the team from a distance. And when the team does well, fine and dandy, report it and move on. When it does poorly, report it and move on. But when you jump into the fan bandwagon, as this tweet in my eyes does, you're crossing that line where you lose your objectivity and journalistic ethics come into play here, in my humble opinion, and thus you get the corn scorn.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to take some of the heat. Because I'm going to say something here. It's not going to get me in trouble, but it's going to get.
Well, first of all,
it's going to get people.
I can take the heat.
Corn
lives in the kitchen.
I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just saying, fans, and this is not just a South Carolina thing. This is not a Clemson thing. I just think fans of teams have become very, very soft, and they don't want to hear the truth a lot of times. So they want to hear their news and consume their news from a slanted and biased viewpoint. Mm-hmm. They don't care anymore about the objectivity of journalists. They just are going to make their preconceived notions made known from people. And I just think that the sports consumer has changed so much to where instead of caring about whether or not they want a bias, they want to hear the biased viewpoint. That's why you see people like Joe Buck get slammed on national broadcast because they think that he has a bias against their team. No, he doesn't. He doesn't give a damn who the hell wins or loses. Mm-hmm. His check cashes no matter what, as do ours, no matter who wins or loses between South Carolina, Clemson, Furman, Citadel, or Wofford, whoever the heck we're watching. It doesn't matter. We do this because we love what we do, and we love covering events and watching sporting events. We don't have a bias towards anybody, but here's the thing. People want you to have that bias because of the fact that they won't necessarily accept anything unless it comes from a biased viewpoint.
I can remember years ago in South Carolina's first few years in the Southeastern Conference, when fans would go everywhere. This is why this is nothing new in my mind, that when they went to and visited the ports of call of other SEC schools, they said, look, these TV stations here for their teams. Our TV stations don't do it. These guys are almost like cheerleaders for these teams. Why can't we have media like this? So that poison didn't come out of Columbia. It came when they joined.
This is what we're getting on the Twitter responses as well. People are, you got Gamecock fans responding to us saying, we want that. We want homeboy radio. Well, you do have that. Clemson and South Carolina both have their homeboy radio stations. There's one in Columbia. You got one in the upstate. And you know what? That's absolutely fine. You've got the station in Columbia that works with the university. They're under contract with the university. They have rights to the university.
They propaganda from the university. I mean, whatever.
That's all fine. That's what they do. You got one in the upstate. That's the same way. That's how they program. That's how they get their audience. That's fine. If that's your cup of tea, go for it. But then you got others like us, and there's very few of us, to be quite honest with you, but you got others like us who
don't take their
don't want to be under the thumb of the people we cover, don't want to suck up to the people we cover, don't want our feelings hurt when they lose, and don't want to be on an emotional high when they win. Now, the teams we cover, speaking for myself, am I personally happy when Clemson and South Carolina, the other schools, do well? Absolutely.
It's good for business.
It's
actually, it's not good for business. It's better when things are going bad because people get mad. They want to call in. They want to vent. But you know what? You want to win. You win games. You win championships. You go deep into tournaments. We're there to cover it objectively and bring it to you in that form or fashion. We're not insiders, and we're not going to be able to tell you what Dabo Sweeney had for breakfast on a particular day of the week. But we can tell you, what his plans are for moving his quarterbacks around, his receivers around, and the same thing with Will Muschamp in Columbia from an objective outsider perspective.
I was about to say, but there's room for that type of radio. For instance, just one example. Years and years ago, when they were first started winning the Jacksonville Jaguars, they said, well, what station is the highest rated sports talk during drive time?
Jaguars.
Well, it was the station that didn't cover the Jaguars because the fans were saying, well, we love the cheerleading and all, but we get the real dope over here, the one that doesn't hold the rights, because we think we get the truth over here.
You enjoyed the opportunity to go cover the Final Four last year?
K-Mac did.
We'll say you were in New York, but you were in New York for the segment.
I was in the Elite Eight.
You enjoyed that opportunity going to that.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the same opportunity in Omaha. Like that's the stuff we like to cover, those types of events. I mean, that's probably the only thing that you and I probably root for is the ability to cover great events like that and the College World Series. But that doesn't equate to us hoping they win or lose. We just like the experience of covering great events and seeing great things up close and personal.
I'm just going to close it out by just saying this again, Corn and Scorn. Am I looking down my nose at you? I certainly am. If you are an independent media outlet, you're not affiliated with a school, please stop acting like fanboy. Okay, please take a step back and cover the team with enthusiasm and with efforts and with emotion if you want to.
You better bring that message throughout the SEC there, because every protocol you go into.
We had somebody
I'm talking to the people in this state who do that kind of work.
We had somebody who wants to know if we're hurting ourselves, patting ourselves on the back.
I don't know. I can't reach around that far. I don't have to do that. We let other people do that for us.
No.
All right, we'll come back and we'll get in some phone calls. We're going to hear from the USC women from their post game last night. Eric Wolford, USC offensive line coach as well, coming up. Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266. Get the calls in just a moment. Let me update a couple of things. News out of Clemson today. The Tigers are looking for a new basketball coach.
Not on the men's side. On
the women's side. Audra Smith will not be retained, 5 years, and not very good, 52-99, 9-70 in the ACC. Just didn't work for whatever reason. He has had, Radakovich has had, and his predecessors, ever since Jim Davis was kind of pushed out, they have had a horrible time trying to get that program to be successful, which, you know what? You should never have pushed Jim Davis out. You might still be pretty good in basketball. Jeff Capel, women's basketball. Duke associate head coach Jeff Capel named the new coach at Pittsburgh today.
I don't know if that's that's a good move for them. I just don't know if that is the opportunity he should have taken. I think hasn't he gotten better offers than that over the last couple off seasons?
I don't recall.
I'm not certain. Ever since the Oklahoma experience.
Yeah, remember he left Oklahoma with some issues.
Yeah. Well, the issues weren't winning. That was the
it was the way he did win.
Yeah.
Louisville's agreed to a 7-year deal with Xavier's Chris Mack.
Good move.
About $4 million per season. Clemson's Gabe DeVoe invited to the College All-Star game Friday in San Antonio. See if he can shoot the lights out there. I'm sure that he will give it a shot.
Some fajitas on the Riverwalk for him, I would think.
And let's see, the USC football injuries from some of the reporters who were out there this morning. Linebacker Sherrod Green was on crutches, right leg injury. The others who were out are the ones you know about: Bryson Allen Williams, Jalen Dickerson, Brian Edwards, Levante Valentine, Tavin Jackson, Mon Denson, Jamias Williams, all remain out.
Debo's foot?
Did not mention that. Sunbelt Baseball Player of the Week is none other than Coastal Carolina's Lee Sponseller. Had 2 grand slams. That should be good enough to get you a Player of the Week honor.
One of them against Clemson and the game-winning shot there in last Tuesday's game.
And right now, Clemson and Furman playing at Fluor Field. Clemson with a 1-0 lead, bottom of the second. South Carolina and Davidson coming up tonight at 7 over at Founders Park. There's other baseball we'll update here as we move along.
South Carolina in that game, by the way, will not have T.J. Hopkins or Noah Campbell in the starting lineup, so they're starting an unconventional lineup against Davidson tonight, and really they just need to get themselves back on.
What's wrong with Campbell?
Campbell, this is from John Whittle.
I knew Hopkins was hurt.
I want to make sure I appropriate this correctly. An injured hand or finger and would miss tonight's game, according to John Whittle.
Wow. Well, don't take Davidson lightly. You know, they played in a super regional last year. I don't know how much they have back, but they were the darlings of the tournament last year until losing in that super regional. And they were up in that super regional, if I'm not mistaken, weren't they? Down at LSU, didn't they go to LSU?
Yeah.
And kind of, I don't remember. I
think what made people darlings of them was they were saying, okay, you know, a lot of these teams here we're playing against, they divide up 14 to 17 scholarships. We've got about 2.5.
I know.
I don't want to sound insulting right now, but South Carolina shouldn't take anybody, even Bob Jones, lightly right now the way they've been playing. That's right. I went there.
Why'd you pick on Bob Jones?
I just wanted because I can't pick on anybody else. You know, it's like the easy target.
Well,
let's go to Hank in Columbia.
Lightning bolt strikes over here.
Hank really wants to say something because he's been holding since Will weighed 175 pounds, and that was a while back. Hank, how are you?
Doing fine. Pay the price. That's remember the old saying, pay the price.
That's right. I mean, did you ever get one of those T-shirts, man? We gave away some great T-shirts back in the day.
But I used to remember back in the day, he paid the price.
Well, I'll get the one. I'll get the one off Teddy's back, and I'll send it to you.
Gotta peel it off.
Just you hate on agent Dr. Kick here. So,
stop laughing and get to it.
Go ahead, Hank.
I didn't have that. I had a such problem. If it was the sportscaster, hey, Phil, I probably would agree with you. The other stuff, I think that it just has the thing on it. I think if it's that sportscaster, which I don't see him putting out stuff like that, I'd have a problem. But the others, I think, is just a person that has all that stuff attached to theirs. But you have to say now, Phil, for Asia, And this didn't happen. They noted this on ESPN and didn't note it for all the games. She came out at the game last night to a crowd that was basically 95% UConn, and they gave her a standing ovation.
Not
So
surprising. Not surprising.
Huh?
I mean, they're basketball fans. They know what Asia Wilson has meant to the game of college basketball over the last 4 years.
I tell you what, though, Hank, did you like the way that they kept the camera on Asia, like split screening that,
No,
watching her
was,
cry? I didn't like that at all.
I hate that.
That was terrible.
I hate that as much as I hate when they find the football player that loses in the national championship game and is on the ground, and then you keep the camera.
They lingered on her, and they had the whole split screen there. I hated
Who
that.
was televising the game?
ESPN.
Well, there you go.
It's Disney.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Disney goes for the emotion.
Disney wanted.
I mean,
tears,
you know,
man.
but I mean, I guess I say that's wouldn't any television network do that if it were CBS, NBC?
Yes.
I mean, they want to keep an eye on the star and see if they start crying, if they pass out, whatever the case may be.
Because they go for the fringe fan.
Yeah, once they figure out she's crying, then a couple of seconds, move it over. Just don't sit there and keep it on it. But Phil, I'll tell you, I wanted to, I salute Asia for your game. I thought it was pretty neat. The UConn fans, because they've had up until she finished, they've kind of had a love-hate relationship with her because they always felt like she scorned, by not going up there and playing with all the other number one players that are up there. And so for them to do that, I actually thought it showed a lot of character from them and
sign of respect. It's a sign of respect to her. Let me ask you this, Hank, before we let you go, because I know you are a big follower of women's basketball, in particular USC. So as I mentioned, Tiffany Mitchell, Elena Coates, Asia Wilson, they're not going to be walking through that door next year. So is this going to be a backup time for USC women?
I really don't think so. I think it's going to be an adjustment, but you got to remember one, Phil, that you have, like, Mississippi State has a number of seniors that are elite, and Carolina's bringing back next year. Carolina will have 3 McDonald's All-Americans on the team. Like we say with boys, you can get 1 or 2. You got a team now. They're going to have 3. They're bringing back 2 who one played the national championship game and one was all conference in the top 5 guard when she came out at Tennessee. And then you got the girl that's coming in that's McDonald's All-American, plus Ty Harris. And then the girl that's coming from Georgia, the girl that you saw dunking last night, the girl that dunked last night that's going to UConn.
Yeah.
Her and the post player that's coming from Georgia were the co-players of the year in Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Victoria, the girl.
She actually tied the girl that dunked last night for co-player of the year. And so I think it's just going to be a different team, because if you go back before Asia got there, remember, a lot of people have kind of forgot this. Remember, they won their first SEC championship before Asia ever got on campus.
Right, but she helped take them.
They did it more by running, pressure defense, and they had really, really good guard play.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe pros got it right. Maybe they're going to revert to
the guard,
being guard-oriented.
Quavos Moore returns, too, for a 5th year since she had a knee problem. By the way, that girl you saw dunking last night has a history of knee problems.
South Carolina State has just announced that they will not renew the contract of their women's basketball coach, Doug Robertson Jr. So it's apparently there's a disease going on in the state. Well, the firing carousel has happened already with women's basketball coaches, apparently.
Maybe Gino will take that job.
No,
if he really wants to prove himself as a coach, he'll go take the South Carolina State job.
Probably the only time.
And see if he can revive it.
Only time we'll probably ever mention South Carolina State basketball. I figured that the man got fired. It's a newsworthy item. 112 and 175 in the MEAC during his 10 years there.
Yeah. Oh, the men's coach didn't get fired.
No, women's
coach.
Yeah, don't scare him like that.
No, I'm saying it's a man coaching.
Well, look, they're going through a lot of change at State. This is going to be Buddy's last year of football. Got a new AD there. Got his own ideas about things. And number one thing they need, of course, is get some money into that program, in the entire athletic program. All right. I would say something else, but I'm not. We'll hit a break, and we'll be back in a moment. 800-956-7266.
Easy, Corn.
Be right back.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
You mean that you wouldn't have taken any Omaha steaks from me if I would have sent them to you?
I like my steaks to be freshly cut in front of me, so I can, pick out exactly.
They have that little stand
size that I want.
They have that little stand there in the Omaha airport. I thought about sending you some since you weren't joining me. You wouldn't have liked that? I
would have taken them, and I would have probably grilled them and all that, but I prefer my meat homegrown.
I mean, it would have been a nice little after Passover treat for you.
I don't have to wait till after Passover to have a treat.
I never forget my dad.
Is that not a thing? Is that not a thing? I'm sorry.
You don't have to give up meat for Passover.
No, I'm not giving up meat, but I'm saying you have to
give up bread.
You have to follow a strict diet.
Eat matzah
on Passover.
Eat matzah.
Yeah.
Eat harosis and things like that. You ever had harosis?
Cirrhosis of the liver?
No, harosis.
Okay.
Harosis.
Okay.
Now, if you eat too much of it, because there is wine in it, it will give you cirrhosis.
Yeah, I have had gefilte fish though.
Oh, gefilte fish. Now you know what gefilte fish is, right? It's about 5 different forms of fish rolled into one.
Yeah.
You ever seen the?
You act like I've never been into a kosher deli before. Yes.
If you go back to the old Saturday Night Live shows and the skit with the Bassmaster, was it the Bassmaster, where they took a bunch of fish and put it in a blender, and that's what gefilte fish.
Yes.
But it's what you throw some horseradish on it. Oh my.
Yeah.
It's a good plate.
Very good.
Depending on how hot the horseradish is, you
take it off the root.
See, we have that. That's a Ukrainian thing too. We do the root horseradish.
Absolutely,
that stuff's amazing for Easter.
It will open up your sinuses. You having sinus problems? You take a bite of that. You will be clear. You'll be clear as a bell. I'm glad you brought that up because I will not be here Friday. For those of you wondering, will not be here Friday's the night that I take the lamb's blood, put it on the doorpost of the house.
Understand?
Brian's like, got to get me some of that.
He never watched the 10 Commandments, I'm guessing.
First, you had to catch the lamb.
Watch that movie every year.
Of course.
Yeah.
On Easter Sunday. Yeah.
All right. 800-956-7266 if you want to join us. Our poll question: who is the South Carolina basketball player of the year? And clearly the voters are liking Asia Wilson. She's got 77% of the votes. Marquise Reed of Clemson would be next at 12%. Chris Silva would be next at about 6%. Fletcher McGee, 3.5%. Joe Cheeley, 1.5%. Nobody's voted for Devin Sibley of Furman yet. Somebody vote for Devin. Don't leave him out there stranded by himself.
And there's also my
write-in
vote for Gabe DeVoe.
Okay.
As well.
Very good. Very good. Speaking of the USC women, let's wrap it up with Dawn Staley. Took it on the chin in a big way last night against UConn. Went into that game, of course, hopeful that they could play a great game and offset the things that UConn does well. 94-65, the final. Obviously, South Carolina just did not have enough.
We got beat by a really good UConn team. Obviously, we didn't have enough to compete in the way that we would have liked to. But now all is well in women's basketball.
Can you just talk a little bit about what Dangerfield did to you guys tonight?
She made wide open shots. They were practice shots. With her feet set, no one really around her. And if you watch them in warm-ups, those are the kind of shots that they hit. And certainly we didn't do a real good job at staying close to home to her. We kind of dug ourselves in a hole by helping off too much.
Question here to the right.
With the injuries and the 3 first-round draft picks leaving, how proud are you of this team that you were able to make it this far?
Super proud. Super proud because no one had us probably here, and the way that our team performed all year long under adversity, couldn't be more proud of our players and the way that they've handled themselves, and the way that they did not succumb to whoa, it's me, why has it happened to me. They just played it out, and we found ourselves in a place in which only us believe that we could be here.
Look at the stat sheet in the first half. You shoot 56% and you're down by 21. Do you just shake your head and not really know what to do?
Yeah. I mean, I thought we we, for the most part, stuck to our game plan. And when you shoot the ball that well, I think our turnovers killed us in the first quarter. We didn't have very many of them. I'd rather have 27 of them tonight and win versus just 13. But UConn makes you pay. You got to pick your poison. If you dig in too much to help, in the paint, they're gonna kill you on the outside. If you overplay on the outside, they're gonna backdoor you for wide open layups. It was that kind of game in which, we could not control it, especially early on.
You've said a lot about Asia over the last couple of weeks, I'm sure, but now that her career is finally over at South Carolina, just what she's meant to you, to this program, to women's basketball.
It's bittersweet. I wouldn't want her to have another year. Selfishly, as a coach, you got to let her spread her wings and fly in the WNBA and overseas. She's done so much for our program, for our state, our university, all the little girls that grow up looking like her. She was a poster child for inspiration and a beacon of hope. And I want her to go to Las Vegas and do the same.
All right, there you go. The comments of Dawn Staley following last night's season-ending loss to Connecticut. Let me give you the recruiting report now before we hit the top of the hour break. Got a lot of news for you. Former Texas A&M cornerback Nick Harvey, 5'10", 185, was at USC last weekend, according to his Twitter account. He said, quote, had a great visit at South Carolina. They showed lots of love, end quote. This was on Sunday after wrapping up his visit with USC. He announced his transfer on March 12th. It appears USC has been his only visit thus far. He's a native of Richmond, Texas, nationally recruited in the class of 2014. In his first 2 seasons in College Station, he played in every game, though he nearly transferred to Oklahoma after his freshman season. Became a starter in his junior year of 2016, had 66 tackles, 10 passes defended. A knee injury last spring and subsequent surgery forced him to miss all of 2017. He used that as a redshirt year, leaving him 1 season of eligibility for 2018. For his career with the Aggies, 109 tackles and 14 defended passes. He's played in 2 games at Williams-Brice. In 2016, the Aggies won. He was a starter at left corner, had 5 tackles. He has 7 career tackles against the Gamecocks. USC has 1 spot left in the 18 class, a scholarship it's been holding for defensive back Bryce Thompson of Dutch Fork. Thompson said earlier this month he planned to sign with the Gamecocks in April, but with the Gamecocks bringing in Harvey for a look, it appears Thompson's opportunity for now with the Gamecocks is in doubt. Receiver Ray Greer from Belmont, North Carolina, was at USC Saturday, and he was offered by Will Muschamp. USC joins NC State and Charlotte as offers, and he liked everything he saw while he was at USC. He plays in an option offense, so his numbers are somewhat limited, but he did catch 31 passes, 700 yards, and 17 touchdowns. He said in watching USC scrimmage, he liked how the Gamecocks have their offense sped up, and he thinks that he could find a home with South Carolina. So he is still looking at things and no favorite at this point. He's also been to Virginia Tech, North Carolina, East Carolina, and Appalachian, going back to Virginia Tech April 7th. Hale McGranahan, SEC Country, reported defensive back Landon Zanders of Shelby, North Carolina, was at USC practice this morning. Also at USC today, linebacker Jamon Eford of Deerfield Beach, Florida, defensive back Tyreek Stevenson of Homestead, Florida, 2021 receiver Robert Floyd of Pompano Beach, Florida. 2020 linebacker Sergio Allen of Fort Valley, Georgia, was offered by Clemson. Clemson also offered safety Daxton Hill of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and safety Jelani Williams of St. Louis. Defensive end Curtis Fan of Georgia plans to be at USC for the spring game. Also, 2020 offensive lineman Seth Williams plans to be at USC for the spring game. Running back Quavaris Crouch of Charlotte was at Tennessee Saturday. He's going to Florida and Florida State later this week. Of course, he's a USC and Clemson target. Top of the hour. We'll be right back.